Brandon Ingram's camp is helping him look for a trade away from the New Orleans Pelicans, but that doesn't mean that his time next to Zion Williamson is over. I'll explain in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLAJake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Friday, final show of the week, and we got to talk about Brandon Ingram, a report coming out that his camp is helping him look for trades away, kind of looking for trades away from the New Orleans Pelicans. I'll break down what that means because there's some cold hard truths that come with something like that, and I'll let you know what's what going on with that situation. Then we're going to get you set for Summer League, which starts today, this afternoon, for the New Orleans Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into the kind of big report here, and this comes from Marc Stein, who's about as reliable as it gets when it comes to NBA insiders, and it's in his, Steinline newsletter, which I pay and subscribe to because I find it that valuable. And in there he says, quote, with league sources saying that Ingram's camp has also joined the efforts to find one, end quote. Find one being a max deal, a 4-year extension, or a new contract worth up to $208 million. So what does this mean, right? Ingram's camp is getting involved in this, trying to push his way out of New Orleans, looking for an opportunity elsewhere. Does that mean BI wants to be gone? Well, let's try and make sense of all of this. So first and foremost, this is not uncommon. This is not uncommon. When star players maybe want to be traded or things aren't working out with their team, their camp, in this case, it could mean representation, agents, others just involved with their life, likely the agents, working to try and find a deal for their client elsewhere. It's the agents acting in the best interest of their client, as they should be doing. So that is a normal thing. You see this happen kind of quietly behind the scenes, maybe not quite as reported like this, but oftentimes, the power brokers in the NBA aren't necessarily the GMs, but it's the agents that get things done. So this also means, by the way, that they have the Pelicans' permission to do this. They have permission from the team because otherwise this would be tampering. Other teams, given that Brandon Ingram is under contract right now, can't talk to his representation, his agents, about an extension on whether or not they would give it to him. They're not allowed to do it. It's tampering. So to report this, if the Pelicans didn't give them permission, there's going to be a report coming out soon that the NBA is looking into tampering with this. This means, assuming it's all on the up and up, that the Pelicans have given permission to Ingram's camp, his representation, to go find a deal. So this definitively says a couple of things to me. One, Brandon Ingram wants a max contract. If he didn't want a max deal, he wouldn't need to go look for a max contract elsewhere, right? He would just take less money from the New Orleans Pelicans. So one of the things it says is he wants a max, and then the other thing it says is the Pelicans aren't going to give him a max. That has been the reporting regularly that's been confirmed from multiple places that New Orleans, the Pelicans, aren't going to give Brandon Ingram a max contract extension, 4 years, $208 million, $52 million a year. He's making $36 million right now. Those are the two things I think we can certainly say. And if that's the case, right now, I think that basically means that both parties, Ingram and the Pelicans, are far apart, right? Like that's what this says here. He wants a max. They're not going to give it to him. There's nothing in the middle ground if he's like, well, I'll try and go find one elsewhere. But it also doesn't mean that they're for sure going to split up or that Brandon Ingram will be traded. It probably means more likely than not that that is the case. But this is more likely the beginning steps of a longer dance. The first step is looking for what you want on both sides. For Brandon Ingram, it's a max contract. For the Pelicans, it's a trade package they like. Look, they've been open to trading him. We know this. And that means that if there was a deal out there that they liked, they would have done it by now. So the first step is looking for what you want. The Pelicans have looked for a trade. One hasn't really materialized that they liked. They'd rather keep Brandon Ingram at least for the time being. For Ingram, it's I want to go and look for someone who's going to pay me the money that I want. Both these are correct. The team can think this. Ingram can think what he wants too. There's nothing wrong with this, and no one's incorrect in this. The next step after that is coming together. If there was a suitor for Brandon Ingram that was willing to give him that max contract, a deal would probably be done. But there aren't any teams that seem very interested in doing that. It's been reported by Will Guillory of The Athletic that Atlanta didn't want to include Ingram in the trade for Murray and maybe include Capella or Kongwu in that deal because they don't want to pay BI the contract that he's looking for. One of the big reasons the Cavaliers haven't made a move for Brandon Ingram is because they don't want to pay him that max contract. So this is what we've heard by now. So the next step then for Brandon Ingram is, can you get that money in free agency a year from now? And that's a big question, and I don't necessarily have the answer for that. I think it's likely a no. If teams wanted to pay you, well, don't risk him going to another team in free agency. Just trade for him right now and get a deal done. Waiting for your guy doesn't always work. And if no one's doing it now, I don't think Ingram is going to get that money in free agency next year. For the Pelicans, it's can you risk letting him walk away and get nothing in return? Say you play out this final year of the deal, and then you have a chance to lose him for nothing. Simple as that. Can you risk that? Can you do that? I think for both of these guys, the team and the player, right? The answer to those questions is no. And if it's a no on both of those, if Brandon Ingram realizes he's not going to get that max deal in free agency next year, he's not going to get it this summer, and if the Pelicans realize, no, we can't let him walk for nothing, that's when they're going to come back together and reach some sort of agreement, some sort of extension. You know, there's far more to go with this, right? It's going to not be resolved yet. We're not at that stage of coming together. We're at the stage of still trying to get what you want, a good trade package for Brandon Ingram if you're the Pelicans and a max deal if you're Ingram and his representation. So there's more to come. It's just not resolved, and that's kind of where we stand with this right now. But I've talked about this. Ingram might have to take a team-friendly deal if he just wants guaranteed money. It's a big risk playing out the season and going into free agency if you're him. I don't know if that money really exists in free agency for a player of his caliber. Otherwise, I think someone would have traded for him by now. This is how you end up on the open market having to take a mid-level exception contract or re-signing with your former team here, the Pelicans, for far less because they kind of have all the leverage if no one wants you. And that's kind of where things stand right now. So we're going to see where this goes. There's more to come. Monday, we'll recap Summer League, but also look at a dark horse team in the running, I think, for Brandon Ingram. That's coming up on Monday's episode of Locked On Pelicans. So the next two segments here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, Summer League time. There's three guys that matter. Only three players matter for the Pelicans in Summer League. It's Jordan Hawkins, Yves Missi, and Antonio Reeves. I'll tell you why it's just those three players and what we're looking for out of those three guys as Summer League starts today for the New Orleans Pelicans. Then a couple of other Summer League notes, including Karlo Matkovic. We'll talk about him in the third segment of today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about my favorite eBay Motors. And they're my favorite because my cars are running because of eBay Motors. My current daily driver, the Jeep Wrangler, it looks awesome. It's got so much utility because of all the stuff I've ordered off of eBay Motors. It's got a roof rack on it, a bike rack in the back as well on the trailer hitch that I also ordered off eBay Motors. Put them all on myself and I can do whatever I want with that car. And then the old classic Corvette that I'm restoring. It's a 76, not the best year, but it's an awesome looking car. I want to make it as awesome as possible. And for a car that's almost 50 years old, really easy to get the parts on eBay Motors. So whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And that's why I shop there. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Don't be stuck like me ordering from other places in the past and then your hood doesn't close, because that is a true story. And one of the reasons I keep going back there on top of all the others is the prices. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Otherwise, I'd be broke. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home a huge win. Keep your vehicle alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only. Available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making today's episode of Locked On Pelicans your first listen. We're here Monday through Friday today and every day, breaking down everything you want to know about the team. Try to make sense of the rumors out there so that you understand what's going on with your favorite team or your favorite player. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Let me know what you think is going to happen with Brandon Ingram in the comments down below on YouTube. And now for your second listen today, Locked On Saints, host Ross Jackson breaking down everything black and gold. Training camp's around the corner. He's going to be out there in Irvine covering it for you, boots on the ground. That's going to be your second listen today. So let's switch gears. Let's take a break from Brandon Ingram, because it's what we've been talking about for what feels like a month, 2 months at this point in time. But look, you can see there's a potential split happening there, so we're going to cover all angles from it. But let's switch gears to Summer League, because that's actual on-court basketball, and that's what's coming up here. So I'm going to preface it with this. Don't read too much into Summer League. Like, do not read too much into Summer League. There's only 3 players, in my opinion, on this Summer League roster that matter, and that is Jordan Hawkins, that's Yves Missi, and Antonio Reeves, the rookie from last year, and then the 2 rookies this year. Those are the 3 players that could impact the Pelicans this season. Full stop. It's just that. I'm not even mentioning Karlo Matkovic in this segment for a reason. More on that and some of the other guys in the next segment, including the coaching staff too, and a couple of other notes that I'm going to be looking for. I mentioned these 3 players because, some guys have been gone from this team. No more Najee Marshall. They still don't really have a true starting center, and they always need more shooting. So those are kind of the roles that Hawkins, Missi, and Reeves fill. And that's kind of the expectation here. Those are the 3 main guys. The number 1 is going to be Jordan Hawkins. Right now, he's in the rotation for the Pelicans. Absolutely is in the rotation for the Pelicans going into next season. But if he wants to stay on the court, and he was in and out of the rotation a bunch this past year, and look, I don't think Jordan Hawkins was the answer to what was their problems. Absolutely not. But you'd like to see these young guys get developed maybe a little bit better than what it is, so that when you do maybe need to do break glass in case of emergency in the postseason, as we've kind of seen the past couple of years here, well, they're a little bit more ready to go. And for Jordan Hawkins, if he wants to solidify his spot in the rotation, he said it after practice, right? He's got to defend at a good level. It doesn't need to be a high level. He needs to be better defensively than he was last year, because he was not good defensively. We know he can shoot. There's no question about his offensive game. It's what else can he do? And this is his opportunity to show it. Second year guys, especially if you're a former lottery pick in Summer League, need to play well. Right? I don't need him to light it up. I don't need to see any of that. Play some solid defense. You're going against either rookies or guys that aren't in the league for the most part, right? There's just jobbers they bring in for Summer League. Lock him down. Lock him down. He's got good size. He plays much bigger than you actually think from him. Lock some of those guys down and facilitate the offense. Don't just look for your shot, but look to pass. Look to run pick and rolls. Just look to do more things. If he does that, I'm going to be thrilled with him from Summer League, and we're good. I don't think he'll end up playing all of the games. We'll give you the rundown of the games and everything coming up next. But for Jordan Hawkins, it's just try on defense. If he does that and can carry that over to the regular season, that's someone who has a spot waiting for him in the rotation, and we want to see him in there because the shooting can be so elite. And with Zion Williamson, with DeJounte Murray, that makes me pretty excited. For the rookies, it's a little bit of a different story. And let's start with the first-round pick in Yves Missi. Summer League is not conducive to bigs. Summer League is not conducive to power forwards or centers. It's a very guard, perimeter-driven type of play, given how unstructured things are. Don't look for offensive sets or things like that. They're not trying to install a pro-level offense here. You're just trying to get these guys some run and see what you have in some of these guys. Big men, that's often hard when you're not playing with good ball handlers. non-elite point guards and things like that, big men who need those guys to get them the ball, well, it's a little bit harder to kind of impact the game. What you want to see from Missi is some of the athleticism. Do you remember Jackson Hayes in Summer League his rookie year, like lighting it up with some of the dunks and some of those kind of highlight blocks and rebounds? Do that. Dunk on somebody, grab a couple of rebounds, and just kind of be physical. Show me that you go up and down and aren't fouling too much. And I'm going to be really happy with what we see from Yves Missi if that's going to be the case. That's really what I'm looking for. I don't think he's going to light it up, and I don't necessarily think that's indicative of him. He's also a pretty raw prospect. It's going to take him some time to develop. But one of the things that I said in a previous show after not being the highest on this pick is that he's not Jackson Hayes. This is someone who cares about being the best he can be. I don't know if we could say that about Jackson Hayes. This is someone who's like an information sponge and wants to get coached and then try and improve. And I think you'll see steady progress from him from one game to the next, even if it's very minuscule. That's all you're looking for. I actually am really starting to come around on this pick, given kind of how his intelligence is talked about and what that could lead him doing and his growth maybe going a little bit quicker than we were expecting at the NBA level. But it's Summer League. There are no expectations here. Even if it looks like he's playing poorly, that's okay, because for big men, it's a tough role to fill in Summer League. It is not a big man oriented type of game kind of run at all. So show me just a couple of things, and I'm going to call it a day, and I'm going to be good. But we'll be breaking it down here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And for Antonio Reeves, let's see where the scoring's at. Like, let's see how fluid his game looks. This is someone who's a 5-year player in college. If you're going against one-and-dones or younger guys, he's more seasoned. He's more experienced. He led Kentucky in scoring last year, and he can do it at all 3 levels. Show that. Like, kind of be the man at times, right? If we're asking Jordan Hawkins to do some more point guard things, let Antonio Reeves take over. Shoot when you've got the shots, but show me the mid-range game. Show me attacking the basket and getting close to the rim as well. That's how he's going to stake out a role here on this team. There are minutes to be had, and he's one of the guys I think that could be in line, even if I think he's going to end up spending much more time in the G League than the NBA this coming season. But again, do not read too much into Summer League, both good and bad, right? If Missi comes in and puts up 30 points and 15 boards in his first game, we're not ready to anoint him the Pelicans starter just yet. It's Summer League. It's just so much variance. These guys have been on a whirlwind and all of that, barely any practices. If someone struggles, it's okay. For the most part, you just want guys to look like they belong. And that doesn't necessarily mean looking at the box score and being like, well, he only had 2 points. It's what do you see? Do you see NBA skills from these guys going against kind of somewhat, maybe not always, NBA players in Summer League? So good or bad, let's have some tempered, you can do what you want. I have very tempered expectations after covering the NBA for 15 years or so now when it comes to Summer League and, what the expectations are. And sometimes this is just kind of like, welcome to the NBA. Here's what your practices are going to look like. Here are some of your teammates. Start to get to know them. That stuff's more important than seeing the production on the court. Show me the skills. I care less about the production, the box scores, the stats, and those sorts of things. What do you expect from Jordan Hawkins, Yves Missi, and Antonio Reeves in Summer League? Let me know in the comments down below. Notice I did not mention Karlo Matkovic. I don't think he's really going to be on the Pelicans next season. And I know people are asking for a lot of updates on him. I'll give you that and tell you what to expect from him, the coaching staff, and some other Summer League notes. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Do you tend to compare your life to others? Does social media play a part in that? And what do you do when you caught up wishing your life looked like someone else's? Comparison is the thief of joy, and it's very easy to envy other people's lives. And while it might look like they have it all together on Instagram, in reality, they probably don't. And therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have so that you can start living your best life and not start comparing yourself to others. Therapy isn't just for people who've experienced major trauma. It can be you just wanting to be the best version of you, living your best life, working through some problems that seem to be weighing you down, whatever it is it might be. Therapy can really help. And that's why I like BetterHelp. I've used it. I'm there. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual. Sometimes you just need some help. BetterHelp, I like it because it's entirely online, designed to be flexible, convenient, and suited to your schedule. I'll have time to drive to a doctor's office, wait around, then go in, then drive home. I want to be putting out more podcasts for y'all, frankly. BetterHelp, with it being online, I can eliminate all that other stuff and just start focusing on getting the help that I want. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And tell a friend about the show. Summer League. I'm pretty excited for the season with or without Brandon Ingram. This team's better. They're more interesting. I am all for that with DeJounte Murray in the fold here. So I'm sure you are. I'm sure your friends are too. Let's get them listening to Locked On Pelicans. For your second listen today, we already mentioned Locked On Saints. You want another one? Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the yelling. You don't need to go to generalists. They don't cover the biggest stories because they're not the boots on the ground people. Locked On is the local experts on the biggest stories, and Locked On Sports Today brings you all of that. The local experts that only the Locked On Podcast Network can provide. So it's streaming wherever you get your podcast, on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a couple of other Summer League notes. And okay, let's go with Karlo Matkovic here. This is someone that a lot of people have asked about. A draft pick from the Pelicans in the second round a couple of years ago, kind of a bit of a draft and stash guy, right? Brought him over to the Birmingham Squadron for 10 games last season. Good size. He's a center. He's a power forward, 6'11", has a lot of experience playing in Europe. I just don't see him being an NBA player. If he was showing that off by now, he would already be on the squad. For the Squadron last year in the G League, 10 games, 17.3 points, 8 rebounds, 2.4 assists. That's not terrible, right? He shot 61.5% from the field, 33% from three. Those aren't bad numbers whatsoever, but the G League is just not a level of competition. Actually watch a G League game. Anyone who's remotely good should be dominating. It's just not necessarily indicative of NBA success, in my opinion, when you look at it. There's a couple of success stories from it, yeah, but I don't think you look at G League production as a predictor for guys going out and lighting it up at the NBA level. Otherwise, you would see others kind of here, right? Jalen Crutcher on the Squadron last year in 33 games with 16 points and 6 assists. That sounds like a useful player for the Pelicans, but he's not going to make the team, right? That's kind of what we're looking at here with some of this. If Karlo was that good, if he could do it, he would be on the team already. They could have used him at times last year as they were kind of trying to figure out the big man rotation. His best shot of making the team is Brandon Ingram not getting traded and them just needing another forward center body and a little bit of depth there. Pelicans could sign him. They need to fill out a roster spot here. When it comes to that, they can leave one open, but they need to have one more guy signed to a standard deal by the start of the regular season. Matkovic would be cheap, gives you a little bit of insurance there, but I would not expect much from him at the NBA level. He might light it up in Summer League. He did pretty well in Summer League last year, right? We liked him and what we've seen from him at times, but if it was really a thing, he would be playing already, to be perfectly honest. And that's why I think it's just not it, right? Let's give him some things, and see. I've seen some people saying they saw him sign back in Europe. I haven't seen anything like that. No one sent me anything about that, and maybe I missed it. It's quite possible. But, we'll see, but if he's not going to, play tons in the G League, and he did for Birmingham, but if he realizes, the door to the NBA is closed, he might go back overseas. But I haven't seen, any formal announcements or things like that of him signing for another team or anything like that. But I just don't have high expectations for him. I don't really have any expectations because it's been a couple of years. If it was going to happen, it would already happen by now. Look at a guy like Darian Seaburn, right? He's been one of the two-way guys for the Pelicans for a couple of years now, been a Summer League star for him. it's not on the roster this year, right? Like, I don't even know where he is, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's see if we can look this up really quickly. But if he was like it, he would have been it. Like, he lit it up in the G League. He lit it up with, at times in Summer League, and he's just not there. Like, hasn't happened. And I kind of start to feel the same for Karlo Matkovic when it comes to that sort of thing. Like, if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. And it hasn't. I don't even see any update on Sebron or where he is and what he's going to end up doing. So I don't know. Oh, he did land with a new team for Summer League. Let's see where it was. Portland. Sounds like Chicago has him. We'll see. But if he was that good, he would already been doing it here, and has been the case. So a couple of names maybe to keep an eye on, just kind of for fun. Isaiah Brockington was a guy that they've liked for a couple of years. Got injured in a pre-draft workout with New Orleans. You saw him sign briefly to a two-way deal for New Orleans. Played with the squadron last year. Like, they think very highly of him, but again, if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. Jalen Crutcher has been around a little bit too with the Pelicans, with the Charlotte Hornets as well. I won't expect much there, to be perfectly honest. Joey Hauser out of Michigan State's fun name. His brother Sam Hauser plays in the NBA. He is a 6'9" forward, like maybe, but probably not. Most of these guys are, just undrafted, not really expecting a whole lot from any of them. As I said, there's three guys to me that like are the people that matter when it comes to Summer League. Kind of as simple as that, in my opinion. We'll talk about the good performances, but I don't really see anyone like catching on to the final NBA roster here, making that kind of like, oh, look at what they did in Summer League. They kind of improved and now they're like a success story. That just doesn't really happen from Summer League. It's very rare if it happens at all. Final name you need to know here, Aaron Miles is going to be the Summer League head coach. This will be his second year with New Orleans after coming over from 2 seasons as an assistant with the Boston Celtics. He had been with the Golden State Warriors before, including being the head coach of their G League affiliate, the Santa Cruz Warriors as well. His career as a head coach there, 57-43, 57% winning percentage with Santa Cruz. So he's got some coaching experience. We'll see how he does. I don't know. They always kind of give it to these assistant coaches that are a little bit younger, not the main guys, to kind of give them some run, organizing the team, all of that. It's kind of fun to see some of those other guys come up. Final things for you with Summer League here is, will we see Zion Williamson at Summer League? It's been hit or miss at times in the past, but I feel maybe optimistic we'll see him show up to a game this time. DeJounte Murray went straight from his press conference, basically, in New Orleans, doing a couple things, taking promo shots and getting on a plane, going to Vegas and immediately working out. You love that kind of attitude. You'll see him around Summer League, spending time with the team, kind of getting into everything with it, really trying to be that leader. My question is going to be, will you see Brandon Ingram show up on the bench in Summer League? We've seen him, Zion, and CJ before. Will you see him this year, given kind of the way things are going? That could be telling. It could be not. Just kind of curious. I don't actually know if he's going to be there or not. It's going to be kind of curious to see. But Summer League's fun. It's the epicenter of the NBA world. Maybe that gets a deal done for Brandon Ingram. And we're going to be covering it here at the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday, and that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. 4 p.m. Central tip-off for this first Pelicans game. I can probably give you the rundown on Summer League as well and all the games that they're going to be playing. Where did that just go in everything here? You're guaranteed 5 games. They've got Minnesota on Friday, Orlando on Sunday, on Tuesday, San Antonio, and then Thursday against the Memphis Grizzlies. And then depending on your record, we'll end up seeing where they go for the 5th game, either into the title game or not. All of the games are going to be on ESPN2 or NBA TV. They will also be broadcast on Pelicans Radio, so you'll be able to at least listen to everything. Gus Kattengill, Aaron Summers on the call, both friends of the show here. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans, this week of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. And I'll be back with y'all on Monday to recap some Summer League. See y'all then.